last time we finally got our capital gains tax calculation working properly, and now we need to do a lot of cleanup. It's just gotten ugly out there. Our tests aren't very clear. Our code is wonky, like we've got this local variable that isn't used. We're passing in the starting principal, but then calculating the capital gains amount. It's all quite messy, and I want to fix it. Let's see. I think I'm going to start with trying to figure out what happened here. When I tried to just type in the starting principal here, it failed. That really surprised me. Let's run that test again. Yep, it's failing. It's saying withdrawing funds occurs at the beginning of the year. Expected 9,900, but it was 953. It should work, so why isn't it? It's just the one test that's failing. This one. Well, let's write a little test to see if the capital gains is working. Do we have a test on starting principal? Yes, we do. Let's pop that up. Oh, and before I forget, we had a lot of problems in the last video about floating points and blah, blah, blah. That was our primitive obsession finally biting us in the butt. So let's fix that primitive obsession once and for all. I don't know if we'll get to that in this video, but it's part of the cleanup we've got to do. Okay, so our starting principal matches the constructor. Our starting capital gains is just the starting balance minus starting principal. So oh, and that reminds me, another thing we need to fix is I think we need to make sure next year is setting all variables properly. I think we need to carry forward capital gains, for example. We also need to do calculate ending capital gains, which is closely related. Okay, so that's going to fail because we don't even have a starting capital gains yet. Let's create that. 7,010, no surprises. Now, right now, we're calculating that in the constructor, but I don't really want to do that. So let's do it, recalculate it here, like that, with an eye towards getting rid of that. Oh, well, that's circular. We can't get rid of that yet, but maybe we can. Let's see. That's interesting. We're only using capital gains amount there. So how are we figuring the capital gains? Capital gains withdrawn is starting principal minus total withdrawn. So the starting capital gains is not something anybody's interested in, as far as I can tell. Yeah, capital gains withdrawn is simply starting principal minus total withdrawn. But if we did use capital gains, starting capital gains, no, it's based on the principal though. This does assume that we're not withdrawing more than we actually have, so we need to consider what to do about withdrawing more than this balance. And you know what I think I'm going to do is I think I'm just going to make that a failure to start with. So yeah, let's just toss in. Okay, let's make that fail fast. And I'm not going to do that right now because when I fail fast, basically we'll make it an assertion. So we'll assert, and I could just throw in a runtime exception, but I want to do it properly, so I'm not going to do it just yet. Okay, so we don't really need to know our starting capital gains. All that matters from the perspective of the calculations we're doing, well, let's go ahead and put that back in for now. So what I want to do is, I don't understand why this doesn't work. If I return starting principal, it should work. And yet it doesn't. And only on this one method. You know what? I'll bet you we are getting bitten by this. We still have two constructors in here, one of which doesn't set capital gains. Okay, well there's our problem. Let's get rid of that. Now we don't need this. Well, we'll come back to that. That's going to cause our test to fail because so many of them use that old one. But we're just going to say that by default, we have $10,000 of balance, $10,000 of principal, and that should work, except we still have some compiler errors. That, by the way, is why I like to use a method, or have, rather than doing new everywhere, I like to actually have that common code factored out. And here, kind of next year, we're going to set this to 0, but obviously that's not correct. We have to fix that. Okay, so there we go, green bar. Now I think I can come back into here. Starting principal is working. Capital gains amount is irrelevant. Nobody's using it. I don't think. No, nobody is using it. Okay, now we can do a little more cleanup. We've got our starting capital gains, and let's just look at this. Starting balance, starting principal, starting capital gains, interest rate, total withdrawn. That's kind of a misnomer, because total withdrawn is actually total withdrawn minus capital gains tax incurred. Well, might need to rename that. Ending principal is the starting principal minus the total withdrawn. Let's put in an ending capital gains. Starting principal matches constructor. Ending principal is what? Ending principal considers withdrawals, and then ending principal goes to 0. And then, all this extra stuff is going to go down the bottom, I think. Then we've got capital gains tax stuff. Withdrawing funds occurs at the beginning of the year. Let's rephrase that and say that withdrawing funds are not included in, do not earn interest. We'll put that here by ending funds. So let's bring in that. So I'm trying to put this so it tells a story, is what I'm trying to do here. Ending principal goes to 0, ending balance by interest rate, withdrawing funds not earned interest. Multiple withdrawals a year are total capital gains. See, withdrawing more than principal takes from capital gains. Capital gains tax incurred, these are capital gains withdrawn, and additional capital gains withdrawn to pay the tax. So, and capital gains tax is included in the balance. There. That's all pretty clean. Okay. We still need to fix next year. Before I do that, I think I want to do one more thing, which is to make sure that the ending capital gains tax is, or ending capital gains applies or includes interest earned. So we've got a savings account here. Oops. And what we want to do is serve equals the ending capital gains is going to equal, let's see, starting out with 3,000. So starting capital gains should be 7,000. And our ending capital gains should be 3,000 plus 1,000, so 4,000, because we earned $1,000 interest. All right, can I stop here? So that's failing, so 4,000, 0. And how do we want this to work? Well, the ending capital gains should be starting capital gains plus the interest earned. Maybe I think I might actually like to explicitly call out the interest earned over the course of the year. Let's write a test around that. Interest earned is starting balance combined with interest rate. We need to fix our savings account here, test new account extraction. Use it or don't. But that's the ending interest earned, starting balance interest rate, so we're going to expect interest earned to be $1,000 in this case. Expect 1,000. And that, of course, is just going to be the starting balance times interest rate. I know that's not correct, by the way, because it doesn't take into account the amount withdrawn, but that actually is going to allow us to fix this here. We're going to say interest earned is starting balance. Withdrawn funds do not earn interest, so now the interest earned is going to be 900. So that really cleans things up nicely. Interest earned. That's going to fail because I didn't include the calculation. Starting balance minus total withdrawn. That should work. Yeah, it did. Actually, I really like the way this is working out because it's fixing our ending balance stuff. We're asserting on a lot of things that affect the amount of interest earned by looking at the ending balance, which is not as not as directly related to the actual thing being tested. So this makes it a lot more clear. I think what we want to say is withdrawn funds do not earn interest. And we'll also say that capital gains taxes do not earn interest. Capital gains taxes do not earn interest. So savings. I'm not sure about this. So we're going to withdraw. we withdraw 1,000, which means that the capital gains withdrawn is going to be 1,000. And I'm just putting this in to actually make the test more readable. Gains withdrawn is going to be 1,000, which means that the capital gains tax should be 111. At interest rate of 25, so actually what is that interest rate of 25? 1,000 divided by 0.75, 303. And so the total withdrawn, which we actually haven't calculated yet, should be 1,233. Total withdrawn means that we don't have a method for that. I'm just trying to figure this out as I go, which means that our interest, so we calculate the base of 8,667 at a rate of 10%, or 866. Interest earned is going to be, what did I say, 866? Let's do that calculation. So 10,000 minus 1,333 times 1, 866. Yeah. Our interest earned calculation is not including that. Interest earned does not include the capital gains tax. Right, so that is going to be, sorry, no, minus withdrawn minus capital gains tax incurred at a rate. So we need to pass in capital gains tax. The fact that we're having to pass in our capital gains tax rate everywhere, it tells us something. I think it needs to be going to the constructor in capital gains tax rate everywhere. Okay, capital gains tax rate. Now that's causing everything to fail because I'm not passing in for answer. Correct tax rate. Okay, so now that's working. I believe what that means is now that we've got this interest earned calculation, we can say that the ending balance is simply equal to the starting balance minus the total withdrawn. Well, we can say it's equal to the modified start plus the interest earned. But I think our tests have shown us that we really need this function, total withdrawn including capital gains. So let's go ahead and put that in. So total withdrawn including capital gains. So again, do this, we'll withdraw 1,000. Really, we're going to do the exact same thing we did here. So I'm just going to do this much. Capital gains tax on that, and this is going to be capital gains tax withdrawn. So that doesn't exist. Create that method. We're going to use by the way. This is going to be capital gains tax. That failed. This is simply total withdrawn plus capital gains tax incurred. I realize now that I've actually spent several videos just doing cleanup, and that's actually pretty typical of how I work. I'll hack stuff in, try to get a sense of how everything is going to work, sort of just in terms of gross stuff. And then once I have it basically working, I'll spend a lot of time in cleanup. I want my code to really be beautiful. I want it to speak clearly. So I spend a lot of time fixing it. That's how I can get away with doing all that hacking. I'm looking at the time on this video, and I'm guessing that we're actually going to spend at least one more video just doing cleanup. And that's, in my opinion, I think that's great. That's beautiful code, clean code is how you keep things working smoothly. And what that's going to enable us to do is when we go into the next segment, which will probably involve UI, we'll be able to just ignore this class entirely and just rely on it. So capital gains taxes, what did I just do? Total withdrawn for capital gains taxes, that's good. This total withdrawn includes capital gains withdrawn. Go here. And now I'm going to rename this to just be total withdrawn except capital gains tax. Wait, there's our total withdrawn except capital gains tax. Nice. And this is going to just be total withdrawn. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of total withdrawn except capital gains. I don't think we need it. That is a naming conflict. So let's do this works. Yeah, I'm going to rename that instance variable to total withdrawals. There we go. So now interest earned is going to equal starting balance minus total withdrawn times interest rate. Total withdrawn is going to equal the total withdrawals plus the capital gains tax incurred. Good. Ending principal is going to be starting principal minus the total withdrawals. Yeah, that's correct. We can't have that be total withdrawn because that would get circular, I think. Yeah, we don't want to do that. And ending balance is starting balance minus total withdrawn. Yeah. And capital gains withdrawn is starting principal minus total withdrawals. Yeah. Okay. And let's capital gains tax incurred. So let's pop this up here. Now I'm going to just do what I did in the test, which is reorganize this to be a little more readable. Still have this but I'll come back to that in a moment. We do have all of the tests passing, correct? Yeah. So that's just a ignored test for now. So withdraw, capital gains withdrawn, capital gains tax occurred. Do that here. Again, I like my code to tell a story. I like you to be able to read through it and understand what's going on. Total withdrawn, interest earned, starting balance, right, ending principal. Starting principal minus total withdrawals. Ending capital gains, right there, ending balance, is there. So the story here is we have starting, and then we withdraw, and then we have ending. Interest earned. Right there. Yeah. Okay, so that should all still work. It does. Now we're starting to get pretty clean. We still need to fix this, thing. But other than that, it's looking pretty good. Here, we could actually uncomment this code now. Yeah. And now we can look at our ending capital gains includes interest earned. So 4,010. So ending capital gains is simply going to be starting capital gains plus interest earned. That's actually not entirely true. It's also, if we've withdrawn some of our capital gains, then that's not our starting capital, or that's not what our ending capital gains is going to be. Let's make a note of that before I forget. Just ending capital. Let's just look at capital gains withdrawn. We've got principal withdrawn, I believe. So what we're doing there is when we withdraw more than principal, then we withdraw capital gains. Okay, so we have anything about principal withdrawn? Go ahead, ending principal. So yeah, we'll come back to that. This is failing because we are passing our interest rate. That is 74,000 was 8,000. Starting capital gains. Okay, well, we just returned starting capital gains. What does that tell us? 74,000 was 7,000. Starting capital gains. Oh, this is 7,000, which means ending capital gains should be, well, it's not 8,000, whatever our interest earned was for the year. Which, I don't know what that was. Find out. Like this, interest earned. Oh, it was 1,000. Okay, because we did the drawing, so we didn't incur capital gains tax. So that should actually work, but it doesn't, because we commented out the code. Now it should work. Yes. All right. So let's starting. Okay, there we go. And let's say that ending capital gains includes capital gains withdrawn. So we start with $10,000 and 0 in principal. Then our starting capital gains should be 10,000, which is, and then withdraw 1,000. Our capital gains tax incurred is going to be 111, I think. Oh, that's 333 and interest 25, I think. Yep. Our interest earned is going to be 1,000. Actually, it's not. It's going to be something else. 866. I think. Yep. And that means that our ending capital gains should equal 10,000 minus 333 plus 866, or 10,533. No, but it was 10,866. Right, because I haven't coded that yet. So ending capital gains is going to equal starting capital gains plus interest earned minus capital gains withdrawn. I'm just going to make that a little... Oh, do we have a capital gains withdrawn? We do. Oh, what do you know? Okay, why isn't that working? Well, let's make sure capital gains withdrawn is correct. Any capital gains is 10,533, but was 986, 866. Let's just double check on that here. So we got starting with 10,000, subtract 1,000 that we withdrawn, subtract 333 for capital gains tax, and then add 866 of earnings, gives us 9,533. So this number was wrong. But that is that our capital gains should be 9,866. So any capital gains, starting capital gains, minus capital gains withdrawn. Plus interest earned. Well, I don't know what's wrong here.
I don't really care about the ending capital gains. I'm not sure why I started writing code around that. It does concern me a little bit that the code doesn't work, but I actually don't care that much about this value. Ending capital gains should be ending balance minus ending principal. So if this works, so this is just a different way of solving the same problem. And that works. So I don't know what was wrong with what I was doing before. But the other thing is I don't think I care about ending capital gains. I need to know the ending principal, but not the ending capital gains. So I'm going to take that out. And in general, I'm not very happy with the way these tests are written. I'm finding it very hard to tell what's going on. This code is actually not that complicated, and yet I'm finding it extremely difficult to keep track. The tests are too complicated, so I'm going to try to simplify them in the next few minutes. But first, I think I can get rid of this. I don't need it. I don't think. No, I don't need it. So let's go through, let's finish up this class. There's only one thing left to do that I know of that's actually a feature, and that is we have to make sure that next year is being done properly. So next year's starting balance equals this year's ending balance. Next year's interest rate equals this year's interest rate. And then, of course, next year's starting principal equals this year's ending principal. If we do that, I think we've done everything we need to do. Okay, expected 10,000 for the starting principal. Oh, wait a second, what's that? Expected 10,000 was 0. I guess we're using new account, which has 10,000 starting principal. So if I go to next year, I should just be able to say this is ending principal. Now we're just going to make this really explicit. I like using methods opposed to instance variables so that if I take out the instance variable, everything still works. Okay, now I think we've coded everything that we really need to code. Everything else is about cleanup, and let's go ahead and do that. We need to get rid of the savings account year initializers. We had these in here because we had a constructor that didn't set these values. Now we don't have that constructor, so I'm going to make it more obvious, except for total withdrawals. Now that will default to 0, but putting it in here because I just want you to be able to look at the constructor and see everything that's going on. Okay, let's clean up these tests. It's just, there's too much going on here. So I'm going to consolidate. For example, I think we can say that we want the starting balance to equal that, the starting principal. Now I've already gotten some comments. I've only published the 4th video at the time I'm recording this, but I've already gotten some comments asking about multiple assertions per test. Personally, I don't have a problem with it. There's a certain school of thought out there which is very dogmatic about how you have to write your test. They'll say you're only allowed to have one assertion per test. They'll say you have to write them in a particular order, like you have to write the assertion first. You know what? None of that matters. What matters is communicating your intentions clearly and covering what you need to cover. And you don't need to cover all the code. You need to cover the things that you could possibly make a mistake on, which, as you've seen from me, is everything, or almost everything. But all that other stuff is technique. It's a means to an end, and it's more important to keep the end in mind. So I think that combining these tests into a single method is going to make the code more clear. And the reason for that is that if I have to scroll up and down to see what's going on, I have trouble following what's going on. So I'm just going to call this next year, and I think that somebody reading this will be able to see that this is about what happens next year, and they'll also be able to see that each of these is starting balance, starting principal, interest. If I'm wrong, of course, I'll take it back out, but I don't think I am. Let's factor that out. Okay. One thing we really need to fix is the fact that we're passing in this capital gains tax rate everywhere. Okay, that's that. Let's also take care of our starting values. So starting balance. Start principal. Sometimes I won't even test this stuff because it is just a simple assignment in the constructor. But since it's in there, I could have said defaults to 0, but if this fails, it will say total withdrawn default expected 0 was whatever. So when I do an assert equals, I think about how it's going to read in the failure. I think, honestly, when I first started doing test-driven development, I got really excited about how many tests I had. It was sort of a badge of honor to have 1,000 tests, 1,500 tests. And I have a sneaking suspicion that part of the urge to have just one assertion per test is to bulk up the number of tests. Maybe that's petty of me, but that's just my guess, is that there's a little bit of that going on. Okay, so we have starting capital gains is starting balance minus starting principal. Do I even care about starting capital gains? I don't know why I would. Nope. Nobody is using it here, and I don't think it's that interesting to report, so I'm going to take that out. There we go. Okay, ending principal considers withdrawals. So ending principal never goes below 0. So I want to cover this stuff but consolidate the tests, make them a lot easier to understand and read, and get rid of some of the cruft that's sort of collected here. Again, I like to tell a story. So what's the story I want to tell? How can I make this straightforward? Yeah, let's just talk about ending principal. So if we withdraw 1,000, we say principal considers withdrawals. There we go. Ending principal should be 2,000 after withdrawing 1,000. We can withdraw another 500 and assert that ending principal totals multiple withdrawals. Like that. And we can withdraw 3,000 and assert that ending principal never goes below 0. Okay. Now let's look at interest earned. Interest earned. By the way, one of the things I'm trying to do here is use the same constructor in every case, so I can factor that out. So interest earned is starting balance. Is interest earned. So call this. We expect to see 1,000 because we have 10,000 starting balance. Now let's say that it doesn't include withdrawals. Withdrawals don't earn interest. So we got this up here. Okay, now we can say, let's actually do capital gains as a chunk. I think capital gains are interesting. So are one of the hardest things here. So capital gains tax, of course. So let's look at that. So we start out with the same amount, and we say that withdraw 5,000 for 24,000. Now we're going to say that we have withdrawn 1,000. Just trying to make this speak clearly. This is the hardest part about this because it is a very fiddly set of calculations. I wouldn't say it was complex, but it's fiddly, and making that speak clearly is difficult. So capital gains tax is going to equal 1,000 times 0.25. Let's just say that's 250, and then capital additional withdrawals to cover capital gains tax is going to be, I'm going to address that using that formula. So I'm looking at 1,000 divided by 0.75, so 333 minus 250, 83. Additional withdrawals for capital gains tax is 83. Okay, so we're going to expect that the total withdrawn should be capital gains withdrawn plus capital gains tax plus additional withdrawals cover capital gains tax. So 1,333. We actually we'll do 4,000. Okay, well, that's okay, I suppose. But let's talk directly about the capital gains tax. Which is 2 plus 3. Yeah, and now we can put this here and do this and say withdrawals on interest, and this withdraw more than say capital gains tax withdrawals. So we're expecting interest earned to be, let's see, 10,000 minus 4,000 minus 250 minus 3. 566. 567 is our balance. 10%, that's 566. Oh. Okay. All right. I think I'm going to inline this. Because at this point it's fairly clear. Now what I did do is cut out the little explanation about capital gains tax includes tax on withdrawals to cover capital gains. I just don't know a succinct way to describe that. Okay, so interest earned, there we go. Now we can talk about ending balance. See, total withdrawn including capital gains. I think we've covered that. There's some methods that I'm hoping we can get rid of. Capital gains taxes do not earn interest. I think we've covered that. Yeah, capital gains tax withdrawals. There. Now we just say ending balance applies interest rate. Do we cover that already? Yeah, interest rate. Ending balance applies interest rate. Yes. And that's actually ending balance. So ending balance includes interest. I think we're going to include withdrawals. So that's under 100, I believe. Yeah, and then ending balance includes capital gains tax withdrawals, which again should be 10,000 minus 4,000 minus 333 plus the interest earned of 566, 6233. Okay, that right, 6233. Yeah, okay, and the multiple withdrawals we're already covering. Withdrawing more than principal takes from capital gains. We're covering that. Capital gains, yes, we're doing that one. Capital gains taxes including ending balance, yes. There we go. And this I'm going to make a little more explicit. Next year matches this year's ending values. This year, starting values matches this year's ending values. All right, there we go. So let's see. I'm going to look through here and see what we can get rid of. Capital gains withdrawn. Do we need that? Not so far. Capital gains tax incurred. I believe we use that. Yes, we do. Everything's working, right? Yeah, everything is working. Total withdrawn. Do we use that? Yep. Interest earned. I know we use that. Ending principal. I know we use that. Ending balance. Yeah. Okay. That feels pretty darn good. I think we've got some nice clean code here. The last thing we need to do is fix this up so it's all using the same values. Starting principal, that doesn't actually change anything there. Yeah, there we go. That's not actually in use, but now we can extract it. And let's pull out some constants here. Constant name, that is our starting balance. That is our starting principal. And our interest rate. And we'll come back to capital gains tax rate. Okay, well, that's looking pretty good. Let's just see what we've gotten rid of. We've gotten rid of that. We've done capital gains. We haven't fixed the primitive obsession. Done a lot of cleanup. Haven't done that yet. We've fixed that. We need to fix that. And we did get rid of that. So there we go. It's been a lot of videos on cleanup, but again, this is the way I work. It's a lot of videos, but the videos are short, 15 minutes. This is about what I would expect for a problem of this complexity. Again, that's not that complicated, but figuring out how to make it all work was good. Was a little hard.
When we'd finished off last time, we had just finished doing a lot of cleanup, and what we had left to do was to factor out this 25% capital gains tax that we've got everywhere. That really needs to go in the constructor. It's being passed into methods that doesn't make a huge amount of sense for, just so it can be passed through the other methods. So I'm going to start with that. I'm going to pass it into the constructor like this. All right, I think that will pass it out there. Okay, so since I'm passing it through there, I need to write another test here. Okay. So now that I've got it coming in here, I should be able to simply start taking it out everywhere else. And I have a tricky little idea that may or may not work. So let's see what happens. And my tricky little idea is that I want to get the refactoring support built into Eclipse to do a lot of the work of this for me. Because what I need to do is remove this parameter everywhere. let's see what happens if I just tell it to remove that parameter. That worked? That worked. Great. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so we can just go through and do that over and over again. Because I gave it the exact same name as the field as I am in the parameter, it's just working. Right? Yep. This is not going to work. All right, so I think we've got that all factored out. Now we've got the capital gains tax rate coming into the constructor. How does that read? Seems pretty good. Okay, let's fix up that next year. We don't have a way of actually seeing that. Well, let's go ahead and add it. I'm going to cheat a little and do more than I really should because it's so simple. So I should see 2 tests fail as a result of this. Oh, well that one's not failing because 0 does match 0. That's okay. Okay, now it's failing. The second one's failing. So I did a bigger step than I really I'm supposed to, following the rules, but you know, I don't really. It doesn't bother me. Because the purpose of the rules here is to take small steps so that when you make a mistake, you can find it right away and fix it and not have to deal with 5 problems at a time. But this was such a simple little thing that I was doing. I really wasn't worried about taking a bigger step because I really didn't expect it to break. If it had broken, I would have had to back out the test and done it one thing at a time and also look really dumb on the video. Okay, so there's our capital gains tax rate passed into the constructor. I can take that off the scratch pad. I put in another little note for later while I was off camera, just something I thought of between videos that I thought would be important to come back to. Come back to this one later. I really want to take care of that primitive obsession. So let's see if we can make some progress on that.